Let's get into it. Coach Colin here. I did not realize that the mainstream media did this to RFK Jr. I'm not surprised, but I did not know this until today. They actually talked over a major part in RFK Jr.'s speech. Now, I did a video going over all the highlights, and the highlights were in regard to, RFK dropping out, him endorsing Trump, what he expects to see from that type of alliance, things of that nature. But there was a big part that I planned on doing a video about, but I didn't realize what the mainstream media would do. I thought they were all just playing it in its entirety, like Biden's State of the Union, or when Biden addressed the people after disappearing for days and days and days after his debate with Trump. Turns out they decided to do this instead. Check this out. So this is RFK, and what I'm going to play for you is what the mainstream media did. I believe this is MSNBC first. Or no, CNN first, MSNBC. Then I'm going to play Caitlin Collins and Bill Maher. And Caitlin talking about CNN just being that middle of the road, super fair network. And then we're going to play what RFK actually had to say about the DNC, Kamala Harris, and the Biden administration, because he lights them up. It's amazing. Let's get into this first one, though.
At the palace coup against President Biden, the same shadowy DNC operatives appointed his successor, also without an election. They installed a candidate who was so unpopular with voters that she dropped out in 2020 without winning a single delegate. My uncle and my father both relished debate. They prided themselves on their capacity to go toe-to-toe with any opponent in the battle over ideas. They would be astonished to learn of a Democratic Party presidential nominee who, like Vice President Harris, has not appeared in a single interview or an unscripted encounter with voters for 35 days.
We've been listening to independent candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. from Phoenix outlining what led him to his quixotic quest for the White House to now dropping out and relinquishing the title of Democrat. He had a series of complaints about the party. We're, of course, going to continue watching his remarks. There's a back and forth over whether he's going to endorse former President Donald Trump.
Amazing. So they just they're like, okay, silence this quickly. And it was only as he started talking about Kamala Harris. It was very, very interesting what they did. So that was CNN. That's what they decided to do. This is how MSNBC actually handled it. They just straight up didn't play it. They were like, we'll just talk about what he's saying so we can mold the reality of what he's trying to say, instead of the people getting to hear this literally historic speech by the last great Kennedy. Check this out.
Live pictures from Phoenix, Arizona, where Kennedy is expected to say publicly what he's already made official in a court filing, that he will endorse Donald Trump. Perhaps no coincidence, Trump is set to hold a campaign rally tonight with a special unnamed guest in Glendale, Arizona. That's just 20 minutes from where RFK is right now. Joining me now, New York Times investigative reporter Suzanne Craig, MSNBC contributor Jonathan.
To now dropping out and relinquishing the title of Democrat. He had a series of complaints about the party.
So that's just how they handled it. They decided, you know what, let's not have him say all these disheartening things about the new Jesus, which is Kamala Harris. I don't know if you've heard, okay? She performs miracles. She walks on collard greens. She produces jazz music from her hands, and she can change your race with just the touch of her fingertips. If you'd like to be Indian or black, you let her know. She will touch you just one time. You will be either of those. Your pick, whichever you'd like. I would go with black, I have to say. There is a little more social currency in being black, I gotta say. But if you choose Indian, you might end up being a tech billionaire. I'm just saying, it's either tech billionaire or really cool clothing, style, and music. I mean, the police brutality is sometimes hard to deal with, but we deal with it in stride. It's barely even real. It barely happens. Trust me. And you get to say the N-word. That's a huge factor. I mean, come on. You get to say the N-word. You get to say the N-word and people laugh and celebrate you. It's actually pretty cool. But not going to tell you which one to pick. You go see New Jesus, Kamala Harris, and you talk it out with her, okay? Anyway, so stupid. This is Bill Maher talking with Caitlin Collins. And, you know, Bill Maher is right in this situation, but he's just so funny to listen to, you know? And Caitlin Collins, of course, you know, she's going to spew out the regular propaganda that she spews out, which, you know, it becomes endearing once you can see it and it doesn't affect you. Let's get into it.
About the people on CNN.
Of course I'm listening to it that fast. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go.
And what I know what the conservative side of America thinks, and I don't blame them. I watched Kamala's speech last night. It ended at 8:09, I guess 11:09 in the East. It wasn't until 11:23 till the one conservative guy, what's his name?
Scott Jennings.
This Lonely Scott, I call him.
David Urban was there too.
Wait a second. I watched from 8:09 to 8:23, they were just gushing about how great a speech it was. And I think she did fine. I didn't think it was as good as they were making it out to be. But if I'm a conservative in America and I'm watching CNN, just for the straight middle of the road, that's what I hear for 15 minutes, is it's great, and then Lonely Scott. It does look, I mean, and when you see the path, it does look like tokenism. It's kind of like the same as The View. It's like it's almost better to have nobody there, like MSNBC, than to have this.
Well, I don't think you could say it's better to have nobody there and then also lament the fact that you don't think the conservative guy, Scott Jennings, who is great, and we have him on my show all the time, spoke up early enough. I think it was a Democratic convention. They turned to Democrats, people like David Axelrod, who ran successful presidential Democratic campaigns first, for their analysis of this. And I don't think that you can say that CNN is anything but fair. I mean, look at that. We covered President Biden's exit from the race very closely, the pressure on him to get out. And I feel like I can speak with authority on this. I'm from Alabama. I'm from a very red state. I have a very conservative family, a lot of them who are Trump voters. They watch my show every night, and I think they know that they can trust me, that, you know, we call bullshit on every side, not just whatever leaning our audience may be. And I think that's something that people actually want more of, is to hear from that. I think Scott's voice is really important, but I think other voices are important to hear from. And everyone who was speaking last night, it's not like they were all Democrats. I mean, we had Dana Bash, Jake Tapper, Abby Phillip, all my amazing colleagues.
They come across
giving
that way.
Analysis.
They come across that way.
She named all Democrats. You tell me Abby Phillips, she's a Republican? Are you sure? There's no way. There's no way. She's literally CNN's new Don Lemon. That's exactly what she is. If you go and watch her, she's the black, I don't know if you ever seen it. She's the black girl that they have now, Abby Phillips. She's 100% the new Don Lemon. That's why they didn't hire Don back after he got slapped around by Elon Musk, obviously. Now, it's just so funny that Bill Maher's like, I'm a conservative. I'm watching CNN just for some middle of the road. Like, middle of the... Bill, what's going on? Somebody needs to do a show where Bill Maher has to just be in regular society just for a month. Just 1 month of him just regular society. He doesn't have to work as an oil rigger or anything, but just has to be in public around people. Just only maybe $50 to spend a day, if that, maybe $20 to spend a day, like a regular person. It's just ridiculous, the things that he comes out with. I'm watching CNN for that middle of the road. If you're on the left side of the road and you're in the middle, that is CNN, 100%. But to talk about them being fair after what I just showed you, how they did RFK, and then Caitlin Collins is like, oh, well, we covered Biden and we covered the whole thing there. It's like, point proven. Point proven. That's what you do to RFK. We've seen what you do to Trump. And then you're like, oh, well, we covered Biden in its entirety. It's like, yes, exactly. You're catching on. 100%. That's what you do. Unfair. You're very unfair. You're very biased news. Not middle of the road whatsoever. So interesting. Oh, man. Anyway, we're going to move on to RFK and what he actually got to say. Let's actually hear him light these people up. I was so surprised to see that not a lot of people got to see this part of the speech. And if you did, good. And if you didn't, please buckle in. RFK spitting nothing but truth right now.
DNC waged continual legal warfare against both President Trump and myself. Each time that our volunteers turned in those towering boxes of signatures needed to get on the ballot, the DNC dragged us into court, state after state, attempting to erase their work and to subvert the will of the voters who had signed those petitions. It deployed DNC-aligned judges to throw me and other candidates off the ballot and to throw President Trump in jail. It ran a sham primary that was rigged to prevent any serious challenge to President Biden. Then, when a predictably bungled debate performance precipitated the palace coup against President Biden, the same shadowy DNC operatives appointed his successor, also without an election. They installed a candidate who was so unpopular with voters that she dropped out in 2020 without winning a single delegate. My uncle and my father both relished debate. They prided themselves on their capacity to go toe-to-toe with any opponent in the battle over ideas. They would be astonished to learn of a Democratic Party presidential nominee who, like Vice President Harris, has not appeared in a single interview or an unscripted encounter with voters for 35 days. This is profoundly undemocratic. How are people to choose when they don't know whom they are choosing? And how can this look to the rest of the world? My father and my uncle were always conscious of America's image abroad because of our nation's role as the template for democracy, the role model for democratic processes, and the leader of the free world. Instead of showing us her substance and character, the DNC and its media organs engineered a surge of popularity for Vice President Harris based upon, well, nothing. No policies, no interviews, no debates, only smoke and mirrors and balloons in a highly produced Chicago circus. There in Chicago, a string of Democratic speakers mentioned Donald Trump 147 times just on the first day. Oh, who needs a policy when you have Trump to hate? In contrast, at the RNC convention, President Biden was mentioned only twice in 4 days. I do interviews every day. Many of you have interviewed me. Anybody who asks gets to interview me. Some days I do as many as 10. President Trump, who actually was nominated and won an election, also does interviews daily. How did the Democratic Party choose a candidate that has never done an interview or debate during the entire election cycle? We know the answers. They did it by weaponizing the government agencies. They did it by abandoning democracy. They did it by suing the opposition and by disenfranchising American voters. What most alarms me isn't how the Democratic Party conducts its internal affairs or runs its candidates. What alarms me is the resort to censorship and media control and the weaponization of the federal agencies. When a U.S. president colludes with or outright coerces media companies to censor political speech, it's an attack on our most sacred right of free expression, and that's the very right upon which all of our other constitutional rights rest. President Biden mocked Vladimir Putin's 88% landslide in the Russian elections, observing that Putin and his party controlled the Russian press and that Putin prevented serious opponents from appearing on the ballot. But here in America, the DNC also prevented opponents from appearing on the ballot. And our television networks exposed themselves as Democratic Party organs. Over the course of more than a year, in a campaign where my poll numbers reached at times in the high 20s, the DNC-aligned mainstream media networks maintain a near perfect embargo on interviews with me. During his 10-month presidential campaign in 1992, Ross Perot gave 34 interviews on mainstream networks. In contrast, during the 16 months since I declared, ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, and CNN combined gave only 2 live interviews from me. Those networks instead ran a continuous deluge of hit pieces with inaccurate, often vile, pejoratives and defamatory smears. Some of those same networks and colluded with the DNC to keep me off the debate stage. Representatives of those networks are in this room right now, and I'll just take a moment to ask you to consider the many ways that your institutions have abdicated this really sacred responsibility, the duty of a free press to safeguard democracy and to challenge always the party in power. Instead of maintaining that posture of fear, skepticism toward authority, your institutions have made themselves government mouthpieces and stenographers for the organs of power. You didn't alone cause the devolution of American democracy, but you could have prevented it. The Democratic Party's censorship of social media was even more of a naked exercise of executive power. This week, a federal judge, Terry Doty, upheld my injunction against President Biden, calling the White House's censorship project, quote, the most egregious violation of the First Amendment in the history of the United States of America. Doty's previous 155-page decision details how just 37 hours after he took the oath of office, swearing to uphold the Constitution, President Biden and his White House opened up a portal and then invited the CIA, the FBI, CISA, which is a censorship agency, it's the center of the censorship industrial complex, DHS, the IRS, and other agencies to censor me and other political dissidents on social media. Even today, users who try to post my campaign videos to Facebook or YouTube get messages that this content violates community standards. 2 days after Judge Doty rendered his decision this week, Facebook was still attaching warning labels to an online petition calling on ABC to include me in the upcoming debate. They said that violates community standards, their community standards. The mainstream media was once the guardian of the First Amendment and democratic principles, and it's joined this systemic attack on democracy. It also, the media justifies their censorship on the grounds of combating misinformation, but governments and oppressors don't censor lies. They don't fear lies. They fear the truth, and that's what they censor. And I don't want any of this to sound like a personal complaint, because it's not. For me, it's all part of a journey, and it's a journey that I signed up with. But I need to make these observations because I think they're critical for us doing the thing that we need to do as citizens in a democracy to assess where we are in this country and what our democracy still looks like, and the assumptions about U.S. leadership around the globe. And are we living up, are we really still a role model for democracy in this country? Or have we made it, a kind of a joke? And here's the
Geez, let me play another minute of this. Hold on.
good news. While mainstream outlets denied me a critical platform, they didn't shut down my ideas, which have especially flourished among young voters and independent voters, thanks to the alternative media. Many months ago, I promised the American people that I would withdraw from the race if I became a spoiler. A spoiler is someone who will alter the outcome of the election but has no chance of winning.
Man, just wanted to play a little more because he was cooking. He was Chef Kennedy was cooking up everybody. Jeez, he went from Kamala to Biden, the DNC, the agencies, the oh my gosh. Even talking about that portal that opened up, that is actually very true. Elon Musk actually wanted, I want to say there was some kind of lawsuit because he said there was some kind of FOIA that they should have had access to. If you don't know, Twitter also had a portal like this with a certain agency. And Elon said that they closed the portal and deleted anything that was associated with it. And he was saying that's against FOIA. He says there should be some kind of FOIA. If you don't know what that is, you can request information. So if I'm texting Josh Shapiro and we're going back and forth, you can actually request those text messages. People actually did that in regards to a social media influencer named Harry Sisson, and I believe it was Josh Shapiro, and they requested the text messages between the two of them and exposed that Harry was very much, he's a young TikToker, and that he was planning his questions with them. He was the operative that everybody thought him to be. He wasn't just some kid that was doing social media stuff. He was very much an operative. And that's becoming very clear as you see him on Piers Morgan and all sorts of stuff. Palette Media or Palette Management is what backs him, and they contract the DNC, and the DNC pays Palette pays him. So that's how that works when it comes to TikTokers and whatnot. So yeah, those portals are very real. That really did happen with RFK, and just the things that he touched on, just incredible. You know, and these are all the things that we know. We all know this. This isn't big, like zero delegates. She was completely installed. The hype's been completely engineered. The Chicago, the DNC, the whole thing was some kind of wild circus. I mean, abortions out front, you know, Obama inside, Michelle inside, they're all screaming, you know, about joy, and you know, Kamala's talking about working in McDonald's, and you know, the amount of policy that they spoke about was so slim to nothing. It was ridiculous compared to the RNC. It was just, there was no comparison really. All of this manufactured hype. You know, they mentioned, you know, Robert F. Kennedy was talking about the first day of how many mentions there were of Donald Trump. In total, it was something like 390 times. Every single speaker focused on Donald Trump. None were focused on policy. None were focused on what they bring to the table, what Kamala can bring to the table. Nothing of the sort. And they also put Biden at day one. And for the president to speak at a convention day one is unheard of. The president always wraps it up because he's the leader, commander-in-chief, so he wraps it up. But instead, they had Kamala wrap it up. And it's not just because Kamala's the one running for president right now. It's also because they didn't want Biden to be the last thing that people saw. They wanted it to be this big hope, production, circus type thing. So they just wanted to pretty much bury whatever Biden said underneath, you know, Michelle Obama and Chuck and Kamala and Tim and all of that. They wanted people to forget Biden, which has been working. I mean, when have you heard about Biden in the past few weeks? You haven't really heard anything like that. And then when he talks about Kamala not actually talking with the media, this is something that J.D. Vance has brought up, Donald Trump has brought up. And in fact, oddly enough, even as Biden was running, you would think, like right now Trump's running, you see J.D. Vance everywhere. You know, when he's talking about doing 10 interviews a day, J.D. Vance is doing that exact thing right now. And it's so crazy because when it comes to Kamala versus Gavin Newsom has spoken on Biden's behalf, on the Democratic Party's behalf, more than Kamala Harris has. He's talked about policy more than Kamala Harris has. How does that even make sense? A terrible governor speaks more than a terrible vice president? Like, what is this? You know, I had to throw that in. You know, I'm no Gavin Newsom fan. I'll tell you something, not even close. But I have to say it the way it is. He has said way more favorable things about Biden, about the Democratic Party, and just being a face than Kamala Harris has. And if you notice, since Kamala Harris has been announced, Gavin has disappeared. The hype that they've manufactured is so wild. So wild. They made Gavin disappear because, and listen, again, no Gavin fan whatsoever, but they made him disappear because he speaks better than Kamala. He's willing to speak to people all the time. He's willing to go to bat. He's better than Kamala Harris. And if they had to go toe to toe, we would be seeing Trump versus Kamala Harris right now. Let's face it, if she didn't get installed the way she got, Gavin Newsom probably would have been their pick if he was even allowed to step up and challenge her, which he was not. It's wild. Absolutely wild. But yeah, everything that RFK said, that is what CNN, MSNBC did not want. ABC, they did not want people to see that. They did not want people to hear that. Can you imagine a regular person who's like, I'm a white dude for Kamala. I'm a white dude for Kamala. And then all of a sudden RFK's like, let me tell you something about the CIA. They actually opened up a portal and they've been censoring people. And kind of be like, hold on, I don't understand. I just want the joy back. I just want the joy back. I just want socialism. Bring me the joy. Where's Obama? I love black people. Head explodes. All over his white dudes for Kamala shirt, just everywhere. But yeah, man. I figured I really didn't know that the mainstream media did that. I figured when it comes to historical events that at least they would have the decency to play it through. Because it's a historical event. You know, there were no conservative media channels when JFK was giving his speeches going, oh, well, that JFK, let's just talk over him, Willie. Hey, Willie, let's just talk over this JFK. I don't want to hear nothing about what the country can do for you. I don't want to hear it. There was no one doing that. Everybody understood. Okay, great man speaking. Let the great man speak. Play it everywhere. We just have to hear him speak. He's the president. You know, and RFK is not the president, of course, but what he's doing right now is a historical moment. Again, he's the last great Kennedy. He really is. Go check. It's crazy in that family right now. There's no one left. It goes down with him pretty much. There might be a great grandkid or something running around who's going to become something big. I don't know, but he's the last one that I know of. And the fact that they actually had the nerve to be like, we're not going to let people hear him talk about the mainstream media or the agencies or the Democratic Party. We're not going to let him do that. But if it was the other way around and he was coming around the Kamala side and he had nothing but disparaging things about Trump to say and the Republican Party, if it was the other way around, they would have played it in full. They would have played it twice. They would have clipped it up. They would have kept that in the news cycle for weeks. But because it's RFK and because he was the Democrat that they just didn't want, forced him to become independent, and now he's endorsing Trump, and he's going to be a part of Trump's administration, as long as by the grace of God, Trump actually gets into office, which I really do feel he's going to now because the polls are starting to reflect it even more than before. You know, just crazy. But I just wanted to show you guys all of that. I know we went a little long. I didn't want to play this in the highlights video that I made yesterday because he goes on for a long time. I didn't want that video to be too long, and I wanted what he had to say in this moment to be the thing that stands more so than the endorsement of Trump, because this thing that he said, calling out the mainstream media, calling out the Democratic Party, calling out the fact that somebody was installed in what JFK and RFK would actually think of that today if they saw that right before their eyes. That's something that needs to stand on its own. And I'm very glad that he said it. The cojones on this guy. I don't know, man. It's crazy. It's crazy. He needs bigger pants, this guy. Anyways, guys, like, subscribe, turn on the notifications. And other than that, I'm out.